Behind that unmoving face, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking, and for a long while it was nothing at all. That is the first thing they teach you on the king's yard. You learn to empty yourself out like a man tipping the last of the water from a flask, until there is only the post, the rifle, the weight of the bearskin pressing down through your skull and into your spine, and the long brass railing in front of you that holds the whole loud world an arm's length from the gates of Thornmere Palace. You do not move, you do not speak, you do not turn your eyes to follow a sound. People come to test that, they have always come to test it. I had stood that railing on the south side of the king's yard for 3 years by then, and I knew the rhythm of a crowd the way a fisherman knows the set of a tide. The day of remembrance was the heaviest day of our year. The house of Alden laid its wreaths at the foot of the old colors, the bells rang the long peal, and the city came in their good coats to stand and watch. By mid-morning the forecourt was a slow river of people, cameras lifted, children on shoulders, and the cobbles warm enough to feel through the soles of my boots. I saw the old man come through the south arch before anyone else did, because seeing without turning the head is the one freedom the post leaves you. He moved the way the very old move when their dignity is the last thing they own outright. A worn gray overcoat brushed clean. A cane he gripped near the top with both hands when he stopped. A flat cap he took off as he passed under the arch, the way a man does in a church. And on his breast, pinned over the heart and a little crooked, a short row of ribbons, faded soft by years of careful handling. I knew one of them. Anyone in the regiment would have known it. The pale silver and dark blue of the Vale Ridge Star. They teach you that ribbon in your first week, before they teach you to march, because the men who earned it on that ridge are the reason the regiment carries the honors it carries. There are not many of those ribbons left in the living world. By that morning, I would have guessed you could count the men who wore one on the fingers of 2 hands. He came toward my stretch of the railing slowly, the way I think he had pictured it for weeks. He wanted to stand where he could see the colors laid out at the foot of the steps. That was all. To stand and look, on the one day the colors come out, and to give whatever he had left of a salute. The trouble came in with a tour group, the kind a young man leads with a numbered paddle held over his head. They were not cruel people, most of them, only careless in the way a crowd lets a man be careless when he thinks no one is keeping count. A few at the front had decided I was the entertainment. They leaned over the brass to take their photographs, close as they dared, pulling faces an inch from mine, daring each other nearer. One of them, a broad young fellow with a phone held out like a torch, kept up a running commentary for whoever he was filming. He counted my blinks. He told them I was a waxwork. He called for me to crack a smile and laughed at his own joke before it landed. The old man had stopped just behind them. He waited, the way old men of that generation wait, certain that good manners would open a path for him. They did not. The young fellow with the phone swung around for a wider shot and clipped the old man's shoulder, and the cane skidded on the cobbles, and the old man went down onto one knee with a sound I felt more than heard. I want to be honest about what happened in me then, because the whole of this story turns on it. The post does not allow you to move. That is not a figure of speech. It is the entire meaning of the thing. A man came at me with a fist once in my 2nd year, and I held. That is the job. So when the old man went down, the discipline in me clamped shut like a trap, and I stood, and my eyes stayed forward, and the only thing that moved in my whole body was something behind the breastbone that had no business being there. He got himself up. That was the worst of it, watching him refuse the help that did not come. He set the cane, and he climbed his own weight back onto his feet by force of an old, stubborn will, and the cap had fallen and someone's shoe had marked it, and he picked that up too and pressed the dust from it against his coat. The young fellow with the phone said something I will not repeat, and a thin ripple of laughter went through the front of the crowd, and the old man's face did not change. He had been laughed at by hard men in hard places, I think, long before any of these people were born. He simply turned his shoulders square to the steps and lifted his chin, and began to raise his right hand to the colors. It is a small thing, a salute. A boy can learn the shape of it in an afternoon, but there is a kind of salute that is not a shape at all. It is 40 or 50 years of a thing a man cannot say out loud, gathered up and lifted in one arm, and it costs more than the people around it could ever guess. He got the hand to his brow. He held it. And then his arm began to shake, not from the wind, for there was none, but from the simple arithmetic of an old body asked to do one more hard thing, and his weight came forward over the cane, and I saw that he was not going to be able to stay on his feet long enough to finish the honor he had come all this way to pay. I had taken an oath. The oath says you do not leave the post, but I had taken it inside a regiment whose whole reason for being was that ridge, and that man's ribbon, and I understood in that one breath that there are two halves to the oath, and most of us only ever meet the first. The first half teaches you to stand still while the world pushes. The second half, the part they do not put into words because words would cheapen it, teaches you the one moment you are meant to move. I moved. I came off the post. I heard the small intake of breath from the people nearest, who knew, the way you always know, that they were watching a rule break. I crossed the 3 strides of cobble I had never once crossed in 3 years. I did not look at the young man with the phone, though I heard it lift to catch me. I came to the old man's right side, and I set my hand under his arm firm, the way you take the weight of someone who would be shamed to know you were taking it, and I felt how light he was, lighter than the rifle, and I straightened him gently onto his feet and held him there. He turned his head and looked up at me from under the brim of his cap. I will not pretend I knew what to say, because we are not permitted to speak on the post, and I had not yet remembered that I had already broken every other part of it. So I did the only thing that was left. I let go of his arm just long enough to be sure he had his own balance in the cane, and then I stepped back the regulation half-pace. And I came to attention beside him, and I rendered him the full salute, slow, the salute we keep for the colors and for the fallen, and I held it. For a moment the only sound was the bells, far off, finishing the peal. Then there was a bark of command from the corner of the yard, and I knew the voice. Sergeant Hale had seen the whole of it from the muster point, and a sergeant of that regiment knows the Vale Ridge ribbon the way he knows his own name. He did not put me on a charge. He did the opposite. He brought the South detail round on the cobbles in a clean wheel, every man's boots striking as one, and he halted them facing the old soldier, and he gave the order, and 12 rifles came up to the present in a single hard sweep of sound. The crowd went quiet the way a room goes quiet when a truth walks in. The young man with the phone lowered it. I watched him do it. Whatever he had come to film, it was not this, and I think for the first time that morning he understood that he had been laughing in a place where laughing was a kind of theft. The careless people at the front went still, and then, one by one, they took off whatever they were wearing on their heads and held it against their chests, copying without being told, the way a crowd remembers its better self when one is shown to it. The old man stood at the center of it and finished his salute. He took his time. He had earned the time. His arm did not shake now, or if it did, he had decided it would not, and the colors of the House of Alden lay on the stone before him, and 12 guardsmen and one who had left his post held the present for him until he was done. When he brought his hand down, he did it slowly, with care, the way you set down something you are afraid of dropping. He did not make a speech. He looked along the line of presented rifles, and then he looked at me, and he said only one thing, quiet enough that I think I was the only one who caught all of it. He said the regiment had not changed then, and he put his cap back on and he set the cane, and he walked back toward the south arch under his own power, slower than the crowd would have liked, and not one of them moved to hurry him. Sergeant Hale stood me down himself. He did not say a word about the rule. He only put a hand on my shoulder for a second, which from that man was a whole speech, and then he sent me back to the railing to finish my watch, and I finished it, and I emptied myself out again the way they teach you, and stood still, and let the warm afternoon pour over the yard. I have thought about that day a great many times since, People sometimes ask whether I was punished for leaving the post, and they seem disappointed when I tell them I was not, as though a rule broken must always cost a man something. I think they have it backward. The rule did not break that day. It opened. We are not made into statues so that we can be cruel to the soft and the old by being merely indifferent. We are made still so that on the day the stillness is wrong, when a frail man holds a salute he cannot finish and the careless laugh, we will be the only ones in the whole loud yard who know, exactly and to the bone, when to move. He is gone now, the old soldier. I learned his name was Crew only later, and learned the rest of what he did at Vale Ridge later still, and none of it surprised me, because I had felt the weight of him under my hand, and it was the weight of a man who had carried others. On the day of remembrance I still stand the south railing, and I empty myself out, and I do not move. But I keep one part of myself unemptied now, a small steady thing behind the breastbone, watching the south arch. Just in case another old man comes through it with a brushed gray coat and a crooked ribbon, and the world has forgotten again how to be quiet. If he does, he will not go down on the cobbles. Not on my watch. That, I have come to believe, is the truest part of the oath, and the only part that was ever worth the standing still.